Hello everybody, my name is Resendez and this is going to be my persuasive presentation. Can you imagine a country where life-saving medication such as insulin aren't seen with a price tag? Can you imagine a country where an ambulance ride to the hospital doesn't cost an arm and a leg? Can you imagine a country where life-saving medical procedures are available to even the most rural of citizens? Well, neither can I. And that's the reason why the United States needs to make a change in healthcare policy. The United States government and all of its citizens should all be advocating for a change to the universal healthcare system. Why, you may be asking? The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services states, the average American pays $11,582 per person, or roughly $12,000 per year on healthcare coverage alone. On healthcare expenses alone. To put this into perspective, a full-time employee who makes the federal minimum wage of $7.25 makes about $15,000 annually. That means that about 80% of that same American's income would go towards medical expenses alone. The United States needs to make a change. Today we're discussing 3 main reasons why the United States needs to switch to the universal healthcare system. The first main reason would be because the current healthcare system that we have now doesn't do very much for United States citizens. The second reason would be because it would raise the standard of care for medical institutions across the country. And the last reason would be because it would make it easier for each and every American to obtain medical attention throughout the country. Now, what I mean by the current medical healthcare system doesn't do very much for us, it means that through private insurances, according to the NCSL, a monthly premium for a private insurance would cost on average about $289 a month in Los Angeles County. Now, that number is based off of what's called a silver plan. A silver plan is a health insurance coverage plan that would mean that 70% of all medical expenses would be paid for by a health insurance company, and 30% would be left to be paid by the payer, or you. That means that not only would you have to pay $300 a month in Los Angeles County, but you would have to pay for 30% of that $12,000 that we talked about a few minutes ago. Now, some may say that universal healthcare would actually cost the American people more money, but for a large portion of Americans, healthcare insurance is unobtainable in the first place, sheerly out of cost. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, in 2018, 8.5% of people, or 27.5 million Americans, did not have health insurance at any point during the year. That means that 27 million Americans are unable to seek medical attention unless it is a life or death medical emergency. According to DecisionData.org, the cost of universal health care coverage would be about $6,862 per person on average in the United States. Keep in mind that original $12,000 we stated earlier. This means that universal healthcare coverage would provide more for every American, including those 27 million uninsured Americans, and it would cost a whopping $5,000 less per person per year to receive medical care and coverage. Cost is not the only benefit of universal healthcare. Implementing it would also mean that the standards of medical attention would be increased throughout the country. A good argument for this would be that lower costs would mean that hospitals would provide a lower level and standard of care. However, according to Emily Gee, and the Center for American Progress of 3,062 non-federal hospitals, 26% are for-profit, 61% are nonprofit, and 13% are public. That means that a quarter of those 3,062 American hospitals are for-profit hospitals and are using American citizens and their healthcare coverage plans to stuff the pockets of their shareholders. And they are less interested in providing beneficial medical attention to their communities. However, with the universal healthcare system, it would mean that it would be in the federal government's best interest to make sure that people who look to exploit hospitals for profit would be halted, because that would mean that those people would be taking money from the United States government, which means that it would be in the United States government's best interest to make sure that every hospital provides the same standard of care so that it is equal throughout the country. Lastly, the final major benefit of universal healthcare would mean that it would make healthcare more available and accessible to every United States citizen. Now, some may say that one of the biggest arguments against universal healthcare coverage would be long wait times, and those long wait times would in turn make healthcare and medical assistance less obtainable and less accessible as a result. However, under the current United States healthcare system, which is private insurance, 27 million Americans don't receive health insurance in the first place, and the few that do can barely afford to receive very expensive medical procedures. However, research from Canada, from the Fraser Institute, who is under the universal healthcare system, states that the portion of the population waiting for treatment in Quebec is about 1.7%. What this means is that a whopping 2% of the largest province in Canada are waiting for medical attention under the universal healthcare system. And that's not even 2% of the total population. That's 2% of the population waiting to seek medical attention. What this means is that waiting in line would be a justly sacrifice for the average American if it meant that their fellow neighbors were allowed to receive the same medical attention at the same time as any other American in the United States. To sum it all up, I'm going to go ahead and touch back on all of my main points. The first one being the current healthcare policy that we have now of private insurance doesn't do very much for the average American citizen. The second would be that the cost of these benefits are actually far more than the universal healthcare system. And lastly, it would provide life-saving medical attention and accessibility to every United States citizen in the country. And what does this mean for the average citizen, such as yourself? It means that you should vote. You should vote for representatives who advocate for you, who advocate for universal health care. Voting is one of the most powerfulest tools that an individual has working towards progress like universal health care coverage. The next step towards progress in the United States would be providing every U.S. citizen with universal health care coverage. I hope that you have a better understanding of why universal health care coverage is the next step for the U.S. when it comes to medical policies. Thank you very much for listening, and that has been my presentation. I hope you guys all have a great day.